Actually, speaking about the Internet of Things, the host of the next panel, Greg Kahn, is an expert in that area. And as you folks walk onto the stage, I'm going to come up and shake Greg's hand, head of GK Media.
Thank you,
Greg
Greg.
is also, you know, he looks young, but he's got a lot of knowledge.
We have a terrific panel assembled today to talk about mobile video and cross-screen advertising. And let me start by making introductions. So first to my left is Anthony Martinez from Coca-Cola, not from Voss. Anthony joined the Coca-Cola company in 2011, and today he's the Director of Communications and Media Investment for the Glasso brands, which includes Vitamin Water, Smart Water, and Fruit Water. Welcome, Anthony. Shannon Reed is the President of Digital North America of MEC. She leads their business and is responsible for furthering the advancement of digital growth and innovation across North America. Welcome.
Tell me.
David Schiffman, the Executive Vice President, Director of Research of MediaVest USA. He's responsible for driving consumer and media research innovation for MediaVest and its clients. We have Matt Stein, who is the SVP of Marketing, Promotion, and Creative Services for BBC America. Welcome, Matt. And last but not least, Matt Turnbull, who is the Group Account Director of Mobile at Mediacom, as well as the Head of Client Services at Jewel, which is WPP's only full-service global media agency. Welcome to the whole panel. So let me start off by just setting the stage with a couple of statistics that I was able to uncover in preparing for today. The first is that mobile video viewership is expected to hit 87 million individuals this year, which is more than a quarter of the total US population. The average adult spends 33 minutes per day on mobile video, 22 minutes on desktop. So mobile video consumption is actually greater than it is on desktop on the average adult. That's an 11-minute daily increase over last year and nearly 11 minutes over the year before. So you can see the ramp rate on that end. From a spending standpoint, per eMarketer, by 2018, when ad spend for digital video reaches $12 billion, half of that will be around mobile platforms. Today, that share is a quarter of the spend. So you can see that this is a very relevant topic for the audience. And we're just going to dive right in, first by just setting the stage on defining what mobile is. You know, we often, in our industry, throw around buzz phrases and buzzwords, and let's get an understanding on how marketers define mobile today. And I'll start with Anthony and Coca-Cola.
Well, thank you for having me, Greg, and hello, everyone. I think I would just define mobile really simply as a lifestyle. I don't look at it as a platform. It's what is, and we're all walking around and we're experiencing mobile day in and day out. Our lifestyles are mobile. Millennials are mobile. So I don't really look at it from a platform standpoint or even a channel standpoint. It's there. And I think that's where we should all start just embracing the fact that everything's mobile. There is no more, you know, the same way that offline and online, those things are blurring, there is no more mobile channel versus non-mobile.
Thank you. So David, the industry often likes to bucket things and when I say the industry, that's Wall Street likes to look at numbers by different channels. So from your perspective and from a research perspective across one of the biggest agencies in the US, when you're looking at mobile, do you encompass tablets and smartwatches and smart goggles? Where does it start and end?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy for the industry and in all sides to look at it in buckets, and I think the reality is that's not how people see it, and that's not how people live their lives, as Anthony said. So, you know, we absolutely have to stop thinking about it that way. You know, when we think about mobile platforms, you know, where we were a few years ago versus where we are today with, you know, the new devices, the smart watches, everything else that's going on, the lines have definitely blurred, and I think anything that can, you know, give an opportunity to connect with people from a location-based perspective, wherever they are, I think needs to fall into that bucket of mobile. And I also think, you know, even just that sort of delineation that we've still talk about from there's digital and there's this other thing called mobile. You think about the stats that you just listed. They are one and the same. They are together. We just need to be thinking about all the different platforms from a consumer-centric way, and stop thinking about the mobile device or the tablet. It is all just, as consumers see it, these are just things they use to live their lives, and I think we need to approach it that way.
Thanks, David. So the conversation today is going to talk a lot about video, and Matt is one of the creative leaders in our industry as it relates to video advertising. That's right, there are two Matts. So I'll start with Matt Stein. You're both leaders, but we'll start with
Sorry.
we'll start with Matt S. The question is there a place for video to live in? Let's not say that there are specific subdivisions within mobile, but do you feel that within smartphones, tablets, smartwatches, goggles, even automotive dashboards, is there a place for video to live within each of those areas as it relates to what you do for a living?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we, at BBC America, we most of what we do is tune in campaigns for shows that air at a specific time, and we really need to reach people kind of right up until the lead into that show, and so we want to reach them wherever they are, and so we do that with video, and we want to do that wherever they're going to be, and they're usually not going to be in front of their computer at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. So I think video is going to do that, and we'll do it however we can get to them. We haven't explored with automotive yet, but it's I don't know if I want to. Our spots are just too good. We don't want people driving off the road.
Shannon, curious of your perspective at Group M.
Yeah, well, all right. I can't speak for all of Group M, but I'll give you my focus on MEC. I've agreed with every point. I feel like we're all very much on the same page. Auto is certainly a concern, and I'll give props to my AT&T client for their It Can Wait campaign, which involves #X and telling you to turn off your phone and all of your devices when you're traveling because it can wait while you're driving. But beyond that, I think the use of video across all the different devices, it's really, from our perspective, and you said it quite well, it's about the consumer's point of view. The consumer doesn't care that this is your video team or this is your digital team or this is your mobile team. They care that you're a brand, and they care about that brand and how that brand is engaging with them. So what we try to look at is really that consumer forward point of view and understanding when the consumer is leaning back with that device and when they're leaning forward with that device. I know it sounds obvious, is a really fine line, because I'm wandering around, you guys, we were looking at earlier, I'm wandering around with that big iPhone 6 Plus now, right? And it's like slightly smaller than your mini iPad, right? Just slightly smaller than your mini iPad. That is as much a lean back device as it is a lean forward device for me. And it is that really true place where it's created a complete crossover for me, and how is that going to change my consumption? So it's not just about targeting the device anymore, it's about targeting the moment and understanding the moment that the consumer is in at any given time.
Thank you for that. So let's capture that, targeting the moment as it relates to video, right? So how do you capture the consumer with video in the moment, and how should our industry as a whole approach video content going forward, knowing that you want to capture the consumer in the moment that they are receptive to that advertisement? Do you have a perspective on that, Anthony?
So my main goal in what we do day in and day out with Coca-Cola is to figure out, either find or create the right context for our messaging. So it could be creating really compelling content that we can wrap our brand and our messaging around, or partnering to create something that's unique and delivers our message in the package. I think from how we're using and distributing that content across different devices right now we're still at a place where we're not necessarily delivering different content across different devices. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of them is just not having enough content to necessarily do that, or all of the insights to understand the different ways in which people can want to consume different content. I think consumer behaviors are changing so quickly.
Yeah.
We produced a 30-minute program for one of our brands, and initially we were saying, well, that's not something that somebody would ever want to consume on a mobile device. Well, lo and behold, it's actually one of the most successful videos that we have in the mobile space. So I think consumer behaviors are changing so quickly that we're still learning every day on what content works where and when.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just read a statistic that the average duration of a view for a mobile video is 20 seconds. But yet, as you just mentioned, that there are much longer content pieces that play very well. And so, Matt, from a TV network perspective, what do you find works well as it relates to mobile video in format?
Most of what we do are 30-second spots. I mean, that's sort of the key piece of content we make, for air, and then we look at the spot and figure out how to adjust it and where to put the tune-in information, the network bug, and sort of make sure you're kind of setting it up for the device and the platform it's going to be used. We haven't really explored with like longer form content for mobile. Designed for mobile. We've had a lot of success with 15 seconds on Instagram and sort of, it's just thinking about sort of what the user experience typically is for a platform and how we can take our content and put it into that place.
That makes sense. Shannon, do you find in terms of many of the individuals in the audience either sell or buy advertising? And so when we talk about content, advertising is a form of content.
Sure.
Do you find representing your clients at MEC that it's more effective to show longer interactive pre-roll ads or to use commercial breaks similar to that in television? Or is there another kind of format that you find works best for your client set?
It really varies by what channel you're playing in, right? So in the social channel where things are a bit more short form, it's a bit more snackable content. How's the consumer consuming that? I'm playing on my Facebook page while I'm on the walk to the train, right? So yeah, I have my headphones in, I listen to something that's 15 seconds or 30 seconds. Once I'm sitting on the train, I've got a 30-minute time span between here and Bronxville, if anybody lives in Westchester, 28 minutes by train. In that time, I can consume a good, because Grand Central's amazing, and I can get on the train before the train takes off, so I'll have a full 30 minutes to watch a piece of long-form content. That's a great opportunity for me to share that with that consumer. So is that gonna happen in the Facebook channel? Maybe. So having it available to the consumer wherever they might want to consume it, I think is an important opportunity. We are producing for our clients, though, longer form pieces. We have a really great relationship with The Economist and GE, where we have some really great native content that's being created for that partnership, and it's being sourced globally. Really beautiful long form, both written pieces and video pieces. And that content gets consumed off of any imaginable device you could put in front of the consumer. And so I think we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what device they're looking at, and really, like I said before, need to spend more time figuring out what moment they're in. And it's a harder thing to track, right? It's a harder thing to track that they're sitting on the train and they have that 30 minutes, or that it's a Saturday. I'm actually a good person to put long form content in front of on a Saturday at 8 o'clock. I am. I'm sitting at home on the couch. So that's actually a good time for me to watch some of that longer form content on my phone. But just because I'm in my house doesn't mean that I'm watching it on the television. And that's changed as well.
So thank you. For David, running research and insights for MediaVest. I'm guessing that you do a lot of the day in the life of a consumer, and it's becoming more challenging, right? So the individual that commutes on the train in New York is very different than the driver in Los Angeles or the commuter in Dallas, Texas. How do you think about it and kind of advise your clients in terms of where to hit the consumer with messaging that's appropriate?
Yeah, I think there's risk in starting to think about is there a particular type of content or a particular length of content that is going to fit into a platform or an environment. So I think what we've continued to see is the pace of change and the way consumers are adopting their lives and what they do sort of defies what we may have believed long ago, in terms of long form and short form. We absolutely spend a lot of time and believe that it's about understanding who the person is, where they are, what they're doing, what they're looking for at that given moment in time, and how we can produce and distribute and deliver to them relevant content that's going to add value to their experience and that's going to be meaningful and useful, and that makes them feel a certain way and gives them an opportunity to interact with a brand. Reality is that the data is not quite there. We're still learning. I think the great thing about all of the technology and devices is the opportunity for constantly monitoring, measuring, learning, and actually being able to see what's working and what's not is there. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, and I know that everyone else on the panel is trying to do the same thing. So I think it's have an open mind, think about what it is that people are looking for, and how can we make sure that we can serve the right kind of message to the right person in the right context, given what we know they're looking for and what they're willing to do with content and with our brands.
And the technology is only to get better, stronger, faster, right? And the speed with which it's changing, I think sometimes takes us all aback. And there was a chancellor of a school here in Manhattan who said something the other day to a group of us about the technology that you hand your children today will be the worst technology they ever handle. It's true, right? So why am I concerned about making sure that they know how to work in the current version of Excel? Because by the time they get to school, it'll be a completely different world. And my son has an iPhone 5, and what's that future going to look like for him, and how are those devices going to change? And we were talking about devices that are going to have projectors built into them in the future of your phone. Like, how cool is that? How does that change your video watching experience? Now all of a sudden you can play that video on a wall for a group of friends, and it's no longer a one-to-one experience. That's going to change things as well.
Very
We
true.
all have like an experience. Am I on? Can't hear him.
Now you are.
No, you're
All right, okay, great. When you have, I have a 2.5-year-old son, and I think a lot of us in here have children. I mean, he can do things on the iPad and iPhone that I can't do, and you know how it goes as well. He goes up to the TV, he sees Apple TV, he sees all that, constantly starts pushing on them, and he just doesn't get it. He starts to complain and wants me to change it for him. So I think definitely, like you said, it's the worst technology that they're going to be playing with.
Yeah.
So pivoting a little bit to social, which interplays with technology. If you read the Wall Street Journal Marketplace section on a daily basis, you would think that everybody is on Snapchat and Instagram and Tumblr and the like. And I wanted to ask this group, as it relates to the topic of mobile video, and you represent a host of different clients on this panel. And we'll start with Anthony. How do you think about the interplay between video in the mobile platform and all of these social channels, and does it vary again by the demographic that you're ultimately trying to reach for each brand that you represent?
I think it likely does vary by demographic, but again, in terms of how I've thought about it is we're kind of moving into this place of consumption through streams. So with that, you're losing context. So you're consuming a message that was intended to be framed a certain way, but isn't framed that way because of the context that it's in. Because now it's in between Aunt Sally's birthday and your Uncle Harry's cat, right? So and here's this great piece of content that I now delivered. Yeah. So it's all about, for me, how do you come up with the right piece of content to put in between Aunt Harry and Uncle Sal, so that people want to discover your message, right? And sometimes that's not your ad message. Sometimes that's something that's a little bit more higher level, more interesting per se than an advertisement. So it's creating that type of experiences within the social platforms now that everything's moving into that stream context. And I think it's even more broader than just Facebook. I mean, when you look at new news platforms like BuzzFeed, everything is being consumed in this stream, and context is quickly becoming irrelevant. So I think we as an industry need to really be thinking about how do we create the right context for our messages, because I think that's something that could potentially get lost.
Thank you. Matt Stein, you work in an industry where there's pressure every single week. You have to open a TV show and make sure that it's successful, and you're always on the bleeding edge of all of these social channels. What do you find is to be the most effective in terms of the interplay with video and social? And how do you think about it?
Well, we try and kind of walk this line between being on the bleeding edge and the cutting edge, right? You kind of want to let things play out a little bit before you jump into the pool, so you have a better sense of what works in the space. For us, it's really about who we're talking to. So if it's a new property and we're trying to introduce it to a broad audience, we go about it a different way than if it's got a fan base and you can really tailor a message to a really, really active fan base that's going to kind of push it out for you. So a show like Orphan Black or Doctor Who have like really, really rabid fans, and you can kind of create content that speaks to them that they will then push out of their channels for you, and it sort of does a little bit of the work.
Matt Turnbull, and looking at this new landscape again of companies that they're not small companies. You know, Snapchat has a valuation of $13 billion at the last time that it was valued. That's pretty dramatic for this whole room, right? When you look at that on Group M and Jules' level, you know, how do you contextualize that in terms of what you're actually recommending to your clients? And again, what's the interplay between that and video? So when you look at some of these social channels that are exploding, how do you think about recommending campaigns for your clients or channels for your clients?
I think to the level that they can be customized to the different audience that we're trying to target, obviously. Am I on here? I think I'm, whatever. And I think obviously YouTube would be the one we can do some customization, but it's really good for the larger brands that we're approaching. Facebook obviously is made leaps and bounds in the space as the leader when it comes to social media, within in-stream, within feed. And the fact that it has the autoplay without the sound, you can engage more if you want to by clicking on it. And then Snapchat, they don't really have the offering yet from an advertising perspective, but they're well on their way to getting there. I know that I was speaking with some people from there just a couple of weeks ago, and they're very excited about some of the technologies and tools that they'll be putting out very soon. But there's another one like Vine, for example. I know they don't do advertising, but there's a lot of big brands that use it to get a message across. They provide utility, entertainment, connectability, the ability to share. And one of the favorite brands that I follow is actually Lowe's Hardware. They got these Fix It in 6. So you have all these really fun little like bits of information that people can go and learn something. It also has the branding, the persistent branding on there the whole time. So it's a good play, and it's not necessarily an advertising service that they offer, but brands just get in there and take advantage of it in a very unique, creative way.
Shannon, what are some of the hottest new social offerings that are complementing mobile and digital place-based video? So mention Vine and Snapchat and others. What are you looking at over at MEC?
Not Yak. Has anybody played with Yak? We got Yak shut down in my neighborhood by getting all the moms on board and having us participate, which was a lot of fun. Honestly, there's interesting things out there. I don't see anything that's getting scale at this point that we are really concerned about putting our clients' money and attention toward. The thing that I'm looking for when I'm looking at video in the social space, what's the ultimate goal of anything that you put into the social space? Ultimately, you want consumers to share. It's that earned media value that you're going to get out of whatever the consumer ultimately shares. Well, why do people share? People share not because they like your brand, no offense, not because they like your brand, but because they like their friends and it makes them look good. So if we can make sure that the content that we're actually putting together is something that is water cooler worthy, have we heard phrases like that, that is going to add value or esteem to the consumer's life, that's going to cause them to want to share. And so we're finding that, and you kind of hit on this a little bit, we're finding that the things that consumers share, the videos especially that consumers share, but even the images that consumers share, often have a lot less to do with the product itself. It's less about the fact that it's water or that it's vitamin water, and not to speak for your brands, but it's more about how it makes them feel or what it can make them do or what dream it can promise them for their future. And those are the places where video starts to get really, really interesting and where you can start to slice those stories into 6-second pieces or 30-second pieces or 15-second pieces and make them snackable and shareable to go out to the. So it's less about the platforms. I think the conversation that we were having about the different platforms themselves that I find interesting is that they are evolving very, very quickly. And if you look at teenagers who are coming out of high school today, they've washed their hands of Facebook. They're done. It's where their mom is. It's where their grandmother is. They were maybe on it in high school because they actually wanted to be friends with their mom. They don't really want to be friends with their mom anymore. And so they're moving on, and they move on to Instagram, or they move on to whatever the Snapchat or WeChat or whatever the next thing is for them, and they are different from us who signed on to LinkedIn in the early days, right? And we all signed on to Facebook in the early days, and we want to build communities and keep them for long periods of time. This is a generation that doesn't want to necessarily build a community for a long period of time. They actually are excited to wash their hands of a community and start a new one. And that creates a really interesting challenge for brands to have to then follow the communities as they move. So being nimble and opportunistic for brands is really key.
So that was great points. And Anthony mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that it's a challenge for marketers to keep up with the creative part of the business, with all of these different channels that particularly younger consumers are entering into. How does a marketer keep up with kind of the creative need to constantly evolve to suit new audiences?
I don't have an answer yet. So I think part of it is creating content that's going to travel. Right? So if you can create a really compelling idea, have a really compelling piece of content that can travel across those platforms, that becomes something that someone wants to discover across platforms, that's one way in which you can solve for the audience is moving. They've gone from Facebook to whatever else it is, right? But if you have content that travels because it's shareable, because it's something that people want to pass along, it can find its way onto those other platforms.
Yeah,
so that's my philosophy, but I don't think we've necessarily cracked the code as an industry on how do you keep up with the creative needs that we now have because we're able to slice and dice different audiences, different times of day, and their needs. So at that one-to-one basis, we haven't kind of cracked that other side of the code. I was actually really excited that it sounds like Martin is working on something that might solve that. So I'll have to talk to him after this.
All right, Martin, you have some potential business here. David, let's talk a little bit about potential hurdles to adoption for this crowd that are trying to get marketers to embrace video on the digital place-based platforms. We talked about the creative part that sometimes is an obstacle. Data is sometimes an obstacle, so proving the efficacy of these campaigns. Maybe just share a little bit about that, and if you see any other obstacles as to why the numbers aren't greater today. We know that they probably will be in 5 years in terms of adoption and spending. What are you seeing on MediaVest's side?
Yeah, I think there's a number of challenges and obstacles. And that being said, I think the dollars are moving, maybe not as quickly as everyone would like, but they are happening. Anytime you're moving money, I mean, generally speaking, marketers' budgets are fairly fixed, flat. So it's not like there's this magical pool of new money that's just coming into the marketplace. So it's got to come from it would be great if that was the case. But so you're always talking about doing something that you know and you feel comfortable with that has proven results to moving it into somewhere new. And that can be a challenge, especially when you've never done it before and you don't know how it's going to work and you don't know what it means when I've moved money from over here that I feel really confident about and everyone thinks is great to somewhere else. And I think there is that. I think the industry and the DPAA has done a great job in terms of trying to bring standardized measurement to this industry. Without that, because you have measurement doesn't mean you will get the money, but I can tell you without it, you won't. And we just need to continue to build that and drive that. And I think the other thing is, how do we think about, the integration of all the pieces, the integration of how do we connect a mobile device-based opportunity and social on a mobile to a different screen, and how do we start to connect those dots? Because I think the more we can integrate and connect, the less resistance there will be to evolving and sort of moving money a little more quickly.
Thanks. Question for the whole panel, and anyone can jump in on this. Share any good execution that you've seen in the interplay between mobile and digital play space. We're curious whether it's your brands or brands that you've seen in the market. Would love anyone's perspective on kind of best in class in terms of that integration.
Something that that we recently did with Unilever was a Times Square-based video that you'd be watching the video here, and there'd be a video on the screen. You could actually flip things from this video on your phone on a mobile site up onto the screen. And one of their products was a hair care sponsor for Fashion Week. In that case, you could have a video that's up on there with the branding that you can watch, but you couldn't hear it. So what we could do is you could actually have, through technologies, you could actually listen to the advertisement on the big screen in Times Square on your phone in real time. And since that, we did that with, we started working with some of our entertainment companies for movie releases, where you could watch a trailer on an out-of-home screen. At the same time, you could listen to that video as it was here on your phone in real time. So it connected. And sometimes it's just the audio, watching a video out of home. which I think was quite exciting that the client really liked that. So now they want us to do it all over.
That's great. Anyone else have anything to?
Doesn't necessarily tie into mobile, but I think one of the more exciting digital out-of-home experiences that I've seen was the BA billboard that was done in London. I don't know if anybody saw that, where they tied the aircraft to the billboard, and so you had a little kid that started to point to the actual plane that was flying over and was so excited to see the plane. It was just an amazing tie-in of location and time and physical aircraft. Like, I thought that was really exceptional.
That's great. I want to take a minute we have about 9 minutes left in the session. If there are any questions from the audience before we have a closing question here. So are there any hands for questions in the audience?
I couldn't help but notice the answer to the last question from the moderator was initially silence, and that was disappointing.
Yeah.
What do you think are the barriers to intersecting mobile with digital place-based media? Because it seems to us that that is a very natural combination, a very natural intersection. It doesn't have to be through NFC or Beacon, although it could be, but just great creative that engages the consumer and gets them to take out their smartphone and engage with the message. What are the barriers to accomplishing that? Why was there such a silence after that question? How can we change that? How can we help you?
I think some of it, in my opinion, has to do with in a lot of the companies that you're talking about, we're trying to move ships who are used to getting their GRPs for television. It's kind of what's the old phrase? Nobody ever got fired for going with IBM, right? So television works. Nobody's ever going to get fired for going with television. This is a risk. And to the point of measurement and to the point of the cost of building the creative, those are some of the challenges. We need to be able to measure it. Are you on the bleeding edge or are you on the cutting edge? If you're on the cutting edge, I don't know if it's going to work. And have the companies that we all work with or sometimes for set aside budgets to test and learn and play. And is it affordable enough in that early instance to play with it and take the risk of it completely failing? And I think for those of us in the room, we wouldn't be here if we believed it was a failing medium, right? We were joking earlier that mobile is finally dead because the year of mobile is over, and we can actually move on to mobile just being mobile. It's part of the entire medium. It doesn't need to be its own separate thing anymore. So I think the challenges that I see are around a little bit of fear, a little bit of who else has done it, and so needing examples in the space to see it, and creative and budget.
Yeah, I would add that it's, we're at the intersection of art and science in the marketing world. And, for me, the finance guys that I have to get to approve my budgets are really on the science. They think sort of scientifically and not they don't really get the just trust me, this is going to be great. It does not work in the room. They really want to see the kind of analytics. And so, I think there's a little bit of, trepidation from the people that control the money to kind of explore new territories.
I think it's also, it's our willingness to just collectively think about it on those grounds. And it doesn't have to be, we got to get the money and they got to get less. How do we actually think about these things working and moving together? Think about it. We know where screens are, we know where people are, and we know where they are with their devices. Okay. So it shouldn't necessarily be that difficult. But are we actually collectively thinking about it and approaching it that way for what's good for the marketers and what's good for the collective marketing business versus something that, hey, mobile guys want to get their mobile money and, place-based want to get their money. How do we actually start to pull those together and pull the right partnerships and people together so that we can build it? The other thing I'll say, we're still early days in location-based data and all these things. And there's some great data solutions out there, but let's not kid ourselves. It's early, but the onus is on us, I think, to sit down and really put those pieces together that says, how do we actually bridge them so that we can prove the result, see the results, prove the results, because we all know when the results are there, the money keeps flowing.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add on to the idea of testing is great, but for a global brand like Coca-Cola, the tests that we want to do are the tests that we could scale. So if the thing that we're testing, you can't see how that could scale, either from a cost standpoint
Right.
or it's only relevant in that specific location like Times Square, it's hard to take that and really say, well, I can do that on a large scale across multiple markets on a national basis. I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to move cases of product, millions of cases of product. So that's the other barrier. And we test things in Coca-Cola. We have a principle called 70-20-10, which I'm sure you guys have heard from some of my other colleagues. So we are actively testing ways in which we can do things, but we're selective about it in that we want to choose things that we can take and scale if they're successful. Because if they're successful and they can't scale, then it wasn't successful after all.
In here, we got one more question from the audience, and then we'll have Greg maybe wrap it up, and I'll say a few words. Can we get the microphone too?
I have a hypothetical question. Would you change your answer if I were to say, or if we were to hear tomorrow morning that Google is about to acquire a creative agency? They have all the analytics in the world. They have all the technology in the world. Now they're going to add your piece of expertise to their equation. Would you now speed the innovation around, now I need to use digital place media because it's so attractive, it's very effective?
Because it has the Google stamp of approval on it?
No.
Oh.
What I'm saying is, from your perspective, because you represent the brand, your number one competitor is someone like a Facebook, like a Google that's becoming a data engineering company.
Sure.
That is your number one competitor. And so as you start to think in terms of how do I help my brand to reach the consumer on the go, which, by the way, our medium is absolutely effective for that.
Absolutely.
Right. I think you're, and you talked about it yourself, the speed of innovation is happening so quickly. Right. I think you would look at things differently if you were to start thinking in terms of Google is actually my number one competitor, and I have to do everything humanly possible to not only leverage technology to make myself, me the agency being, become a data engineering company, and I'm actually going to make digital place media a core of my media strategy because it helps me leverage technology to reach that consumer on the go and help a brand like Coca-Cola reach their consumers.
Thank you for that thought. I want to just close by one quick question, and anyone in the panel can field this. For the audience to leave with, Anthony spoke about that 70-20-10 rule. So how, for the audience, do you get within that 10%? What can the audience do to help you as marketers and representing brands on the agency side test and learn? And anyone that has a point of view.
How can people in the audience help us test and learn?
Correct.
Keep bringing the ideas.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, keep bringing it.
Bring new ideas.
Okay,
new solutions.
So bring new ideas. We're gonna, the next session that we do with Barry, we'll talk about the ideas to be brought. I want to thank this group of panelists, Anthony, Shannon, David, Matt, and Matt, for coming out today, and to the whole audience, and Barry.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Well done. Greg's experience on the media owner side and the agency side has served you well, and this has been very good. Let me try to tie a couple of things up that we discussed throughout the day today. One of them was actually the scale, to your question. Nielsen has now indicated that digital place-based advertising reaches more people on a monthly basis than the top 20 cable networks and the top 25 primetime TV shows. And it's actually our fault that we haven't got this message to all of you because scale is there. When you get someone like Captivate, who's merged with Wall Street Journal, when you've got Zoom in every gym throughout the country, when you've got AdSpace, which is in virtually every mall and every screen lobby, there is scale there. But that's part of why we do this, to kind of educate and send the message out. You guys have thousands of media people calling on you every day. You've got lots of things. You've got lots of data. And it's up to us to do that. But it's part of why we put this on. But the scale is there. And what we've also found is we all know video is the most powerful medium. And as television is now People are cutting the cord. People are doing different things with TV. How can you get big screens? And the other part that's interesting is that these big screens that we have, you know, they are on your way throughout life, where the phone may be in your pocket, it may be in your pocketbook, and the beauty is that we can work together with mobile. So we can enact, you could see something in a captivated elevator and then be retargeted up at your desk, or just take something out. So that's the change that's going on now, and we'll always have the power of video, and now we're interacting it with that, which is key. And it'll be a little provocative for a moment. Everybody's too much quoted John Wanamaker and riffed off his quote, which we all know all too well. I'd like to take another new crack at that. I would say, is it possible that a media person may say, I know that half of my digital advertising is working because I know the other half is fraud or not viewable. So what do you think about? I mean, certainly fraud and viewability are issues. And look, maybe we bring that up because of all of our screens are above the fold 100% of the time, and because we're closed systems that do not really have any fraudulent issues. But how do you folks look at that? How do you look at the fraud issues? How do you look at the lack of viewability issues? What's some of your thoughts on that? By the way, Sheena and I first met, we were introduced by the Prince of Monaco, who's actually, I think, a relation of Francois de Gaspé-Bouillon. But it actually is true. So who's got some thoughts on this? And by the way, I don't know if you heard, but just in the past 24, 48 hours, Kraft has said that 75 to 85% of their data, they are saying we're not going to use it because it's fraudulent. But Shannon, what do you have? Some thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm sure everyone's fairly familiar that WPP or Group M specifically has taken a fairly strong stance on viewability and trading against viewability, and MEC is very much at the forefront of changing how we build our relationships with our media partners.
Is that with WPP and Xaxis together?
The whole group, right? The whole group is all about viewability, and we're moving to 100% viewable, which is higher than the industry standard.
So does that mean that you're only going to pay for something that's
only going to pay for something that's 100% in view?
Good. How difficult is that to be? That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the difficult part right now, to be honest. We have the tracking capability to see it. The difficult part will be on the reconciliation. Right?
And the negotiation after.
And the negotiation
yeah,
after.
Right, sure.
But at the end of the day, it should start to create scarcity in the market, which is better for the publishers, it's better for the advertiser, and it's better for the agency.
It's more real.
At the end of the day. It's more real, we know. Now, the fraudulent question is an entirely different question. How do we start to move away from fraud? That's about choosing your partners and choosing your partners carefully. That's about making sure that the partners you do have on your plan, the publishers that you do work with, are not employing any tactics on their side that could be drawing fraudulent impressions or fraudulent clicks onto their site. Is it a perfect science? No. Is it going to get better as the industry talks about it more and more, as we start to put more measurement tools in place so that we can track it more and more? Absolutely, it will continue to get better. But we have to hold each other accountable on these things. And we have to be our own advocates, but also our own police force.
It's good that you're doing that. The 100% viewability is key. And is that also for 100% of the time that the advert is running?
For video.
Okay,
for video, I don't know that we've technically, we might have released our video standard, I can't remember.
Yeah, but I mean,
we're not trading on the video standard yet.
Because the
50%.
Yeah, by the way, the IAB standard.
It's already well above, yes.
Yeah, let me just indicate to the audience, the IAB standard for an impression to be viewable is that 50% of the player has to be above the fold for a minimum of 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Right.
So
right. So we're going for 100% viewable, but 50% of the 50% of the time.
Oh, we're moving in the right direction.
So if it's a 30-second piece, I need 15 seconds of it to run.
Right.
That also changes, by the way, the creative, right?
Sure.
So from a creative perspective, advertisers and their creative agencies really need to be thinking about what is in that first 15 seconds. Because I can tell you, even on a banner ad that has a rotation to it, how many times do you see, yeah, it got 100% in view, it only went through 2 frames, but in neither of those 2 frames did I see who the advertiser was? Well, that's a miss, right? If you're not changing how you're looking at your creative and that you're actually putting your brand slogan right there on the front, or your product or something that catches the eye of the consumer.
Very key point. We actually spoke earlier, Shannon, about how with all the creativity in media, the majority of creatives are spending their time with 30s and banners and looking at it in the same way. Did you have a
No, I was just saying that from that perspective, we always recommend persistent ranting. That's right there, so you can always see it.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah.
What I'll add, I mean, as an agency, I mean, we're doing the same approach. I think the bad part of the story is wow, the data wasn't great, and what we thought was isn't. Okay, we get it.
By the way, Joe Mandisi, what we thought was isn't. It's a good quote for me.
There you go. But I think the reality is what that has done has absolutely raised the level of accountability.
Right.
And I know, their agency, our agency, and I would hope others as well. That level of accountability. I mean, okay, that world is done, and we have to reset and rethink and do it. Digital will get to a better place from a measurement perspective and accountability perspective. We've just had a little hurdle and a little hiccup, maybe not a little one, but a significant one. But you know what? It's also a question of how we think about accountability and measurement and what we label what. So I mean, we'll get there.
But to your point, if we all hold hands and jump off that cliff together, all boats will rise.
Excellent, good. So we're going to wrap it up. Actually, Bob Liadis was here this morning, who talked about, he's doing a lot of great work in trying to set the viewability standards. He's a friend, and he was talking about, also was great, how digital place-based doesn't have these issues. Thank you all very much, Greg. Great work, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give him a hand.